the college level that are doing great things and presenting conversations that we wish we would have heard when we were going through the recruiting process and coming up as high school kids, whether it's, lifestyle or training practices, faith, all you name it, all those sorts of things that we wish we kind of had a little bit more direction and guidance with coming through the process. And so in the last year or so, we've kind of dipped back into our shore conference roots and tapped into our friends and people that we either worked with or wrestled with or have a relationship with, from Dan O'Cone, Jay Nace, Rob Nucci, Vinny Santinello, Steve Rivera, Mike Kiley. I could go on and probably missing a few people, but Matt Hughes from Matawan posted that we should reach out to you and have a conversation with you. And, you did some great things this year and have been doing some great things over the past couple of years. So here we are.
Sounds good.
Awesome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Howdy and aloha. We are here, you are there, but we do greatly appreciate you joining us this evening for another epic conversation. We are stepping back on the mat. We are stepping back into the Shore Conference, and we're going belly to belly with Coach Eric Morley from Middletown North High School. But before we get rolling, you all know the drill. Make sure you are like this episode and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Drop a comment. Every view, every review, every share helps us grow and give back to the sport we love. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. This episode, as always, is fueled by CS Instant Coffee and Black Sheep Endurance Coaching. As always, let's not forget why we're doing this over here at Airey Bros Radio. We're shining a light on the programs and coaches we wish you had access to coming up. If you're a student of the sport, parent, or a coach looking for the right fit, share this with the family who needs to hear it. Wrestlers, parents, coaches, pull up a seat. On to tonight's guest. As I mentioned, Coach Eric Morley from Middletown North is joining us. He took over for the Lions in 2023 from an 8-12 record to a 24-2 record this season. They were number 6 in the Shore Conference, top 20 in New Jersey, and they were the B Division champs. He also worked closely and led Tyler Kalinsky to a 2020 New Jersey State title. And he's building a culture around the mantra of tough together. Without further ado, Coach Eric Morley, it is an honor and pleasure to have you with us this evening. We do greatly appreciate your time. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation. You guys having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to talk. As I mentioned, Jimmy and I are Shore Conference alumni, and we wear that with a badge of honor, even though we have lived far from the state at this point. We love to represent, and whenever we can shine the light on the Shore Conference and the dominance that it has, not only in wrestling, but all sports. We are pleased to do that and have a great conversation. So thank you. Coach, before we get too far into it, anywhere you would like us to send the fans, get you that Airey Bros bump over on the Middletown North socials, or if you have any things coming up, clubs or anything with the school, the floor is yours.
Sure. Our Instagram and Twitter handles are the same. It's MN Lions Wrestling. And again, we're on Instagram and Twitter, or X, whatever it's called now.
Yeah, either or works for us. Coach, the most important question we're going to ask you this evening, is it pork roll or Taylor ham?
Pork roll.
All right. Attaboy. Yeah, and so I guess, go from there. We like to make the world a little bit smaller over here. We have some through lines for you. So first and foremost, I graduated from Point Pleasant Borough in 1994. One of my teammates from 91 to 93 was Matt Warren. His father was one of the first coaches at Middletown North. So there's a little Middletown North connection for you, being from Point Pleasant Borough. Our neighbors over to, the east, maybe the northeast, Point Beach. One of your former coaches at Middletown North, Coach Sergio. We grew up with him and have known the Sergios for quite a long time. So we have that little through line. Jim, you got another one?
Coach Matt Hughes was the one who said, hey, get Coach Morley on. He's doing great things. I saw you had North Hunterdon on. Why don't you have Middletown North on? So Coach Hughes. And then I feel like I'm forgetting one, Rich. Am I forgetting one? Oh, Coach Nace and Coach Nucci. Those are two guys that have had a deep impact on you, and we've had them on the podcast, and we've known them for a long time as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've been really fortunate to have good teachers and good friends in the sport of wrestling. Coach Nace and Coach Nucci being two of the ones who have looked out for me, and I've developed really good relationships with today. And Coach Hughes, same thing. I think we started coaching, being varsity coaches about the same time, if I'm not mistaken. And turns out he's from Pennsylvania, but he lives down the street from me in Bradley Beach. So we've become pretty good friends too.
Very cool. Bradley Beach, we'll have to maybe pick your brain, see if you've made some trips to another guest of ours over at the Bradley Brew Project.
I've not.
Yeah, okay.
Unicorn girls, let's go.
Yes. I was actually teammates with Jason Nace for 2 years. I was fortunate enough to wrestle with him in 1992, 91 and 92. I was a freshman and sophomore during his junior and senior year. So I was able to be mentored by him, and he had a huge impact on me, and he's a great individual, awesome human.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. So Coach, what's your origin story? We love to talk about origin stories. You know, we have ours and Jimmy has his. And how did you, I know you're a soccer player. How did you get into wrestling? And then I guess, how did that lead you into coaching?
Probably about as simple as it could be, to be honest. I went to Shore Regional. Wrestling really wasn't a big thing there. It wasn't established. It wasn't a big sport. Shore Regional, the bigger sports were probably basketball, to be honest. Football, basketball, soccer, and field hockey, to be honest. Field hockey is a national powerhouse there every year. And I was small. I was a good athlete. I was pretty talented at most things I did. I was a varsity soccer player freshman year, so I was a standout athlete. Shore Regional did not have a rec program at that time. A gentleman, Greg Stackhouse, was in the process of starting it. And I was fortunate to, after the fact, to be a small part of that. But there was like 4 kids we're talking about, like, who didn't know anything, right? We had no leadership, no coaches or anything like that. So wrestling just wasn't a big sport at Shore Regional. And I happened to be walking down the hallway, and the wrestling coach pulled me aside and threw me on a scale. I weighed 100 pounds, and he said, "You're a varsity wrestler." I said, "All right." And that kind of got me into wrestling. I'm pretty sure, I'd have to double check, and I don't even know where I could double check. I was terrible. I was an awful wrestler. I'm pretty sure I wrestled Jimmy actually my freshman year. Yeah, and to be fair, like, not to take a shot at Jimmy or whatever, but I think I got pinned by everybody except for Jimmy. So maybe that's a tip of my hat, right? I guess I was doing good. But really quickly after that, you know what I mean? Like, I hated losing. I was 0-10. I didn't know anything. I hated the fact that there was nothing I could do about it, right? Like, I just didn't know the sport. I didn't know how to handle myself or how to win, quite honestly. And shortly after that, going back to Coach Nace, clubs weren't really much of a thing around that time. Like, they weren't really established. I watched Coach Santinello's podcast, I guess a week or two ago, whenever that, maybe 3 weeks ago. And it seemed like he was starting around, I guess, that time. And I guess Jimmy had mentioned he was there also at that time. But Coach Nace had a small clinic or club, if you will, called Gut Wrench at Tom Shore South with John DeMarco at the time. And it was like a short thing. But I remember a couple of us from Shore Regional, probably about 4 of us, would take that drive down once or twice a week, whatever it was. And it kind of just started me back into the sport in a more serious manner. But soccer was still really my main sport. And then getting into college, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. Like, there was no doubt about that. I was dead set on that from the time I was in high school. And I was fortunate and lucky, really, to student teach at Raritan High School in 2008, 2009. And my cooperating teacher was the tennis coach. So my first day I had to go to like an athletic meeting, and I sat next to Coach Nucci, who questioned why I was there. And I just said I was student teaching, and he just kind of dragged me along and said, "Well, you're going to coach wrestling at Raritan High School." So in 2008, 2009, that started my journey into short conference coaching.
Okay, excellent. And we'll tie it back into that through line. I was also an alumni of the Gut Wrench Wrestling Club. John DeMarco was an amazing human being. And Jeff Gauthier was the other coach at that time that was there. And yeah, I can remember leaving track practice or leaving track meets and getting in my car and driving to Toms River South twice a week to do the freestyle and that sort of stuff. And yeah, can't say enough about both of those individuals in that program. So there's a little tying it back. Small
Absolutely.
world gets smaller. Um, so you did your student teaching in Raritan. You were helping with Coach Nucci. What do you teach?
I teach special ed English. So right now, again, at Middletown North, and I kind of journeyed a little bit. Even like my career path in 2005, 2004, 2005, when I went to college, teaching was probably like the best thing you could do. Like everybody in the world wanted to be a teacher. It was like a no brainer. In 2009, it was probably the worst thing you could do. There were just no jobs. It was tough to get a job. So I was at Raritan coaching, right? And again, that was kind of like the idea of making yourself marketable and accessible to the building where people would want to hire you, but there just weren't jobs, quite frankly. So I struggled with that for a couple of years, and I tried to coach at Raritan as long as I could. Coach Nucci's, in my opinion, the best coach in the state. I know he recently stepped down, but I was fortunate enough to see what he did with that program and that community, which is pretty similar to Middletown North, if not exactly the same for the most part. So I mimic a lot of what I do based on what he did. But I had to leave the sport and education for probably 3 or 4 years, from 2011-ish to 2014, I want to say. I just couldn't get a job teaching, so I got back into sales. And again, just kind of like coincidental or divine, you could look at it any way you want. When I was in high school trying to figure out the sport, there was a building on Route 35 in Ocean, and I didn't know what it was called. But same thing, somebody from Long Branch, Sean Sims' uncle. Sean Sims was a Long Branch wrestler. His uncle was, I believe, a cop, if I'm not mistaken. Was just running like small workouts. I don't even know how we got wind of it, but me and my partner at Shore Regional ended up going there like once or twice. And I remember the building and the logo of the building. And in 2011, 2012, I walked into a building in Asbury Park on Cookman Ave before Cookman Ave blew up into what it is today. And it was called Fitness Lifestyles. And the owner was actually the same owner from Ocean Township, and he used to rent out space in the back for wrestling workouts. So I ended up being in fitness sales for a couple of years before I got back into coaching in like 2014.
So, a couple things off of that. What college did you go to?
Monmouth University.
There you go, Rich.
Go Hawks.
Rich is a alum. He had a couple records there on the track for a little bit. I don't know if they stand anymore. And also, I want to thank you. You said you're a special ed teacher. I'm first team all special ed. So I want to thank you for being a special ed teacher. We need more good special ed teachers out there. So thank you very much, sir.
Appreciate that.
You never thanked me for being a special ed teacher.
Well, thanks, Rich. Thanks for being a special ed teacher, but you left us. You left us for PE. So Eric, obviously you had Coach Nucci to learn from, right? But you were predominantly a soccer player. Do you still coach soccer? Were you coaching soccer at a certain point?
I do. I'm the varsity soccer coach too, so I go all year. It seems like it never ends. Wrestling's definitely more demanding in terms of time and commitment for sure. Because soccer, everybody plays on their own club teams, in the off season, so they kind of go and do their own thing and stay in shape and keep their foot on the ball. But wrestling, it's kind of, especially like our kids at North, I want to keep them together, going back to that culture as often and as much as possible. So it takes a lot of time and commitment to do that, which again isn't original. It's just something we're trying to instill and keep at Middletown North.
How many soccer players or wrestlers? Any?
A handful, to be honest. It's funny, and they all laugh about it, but they're like at North, they're very different kids. To be polite about that, the soccer kids are a certain way, and the wrestlers are a totally different climate. So, and it's fun. It's nice having like your hand in both pots at the same time, and it's different too. I mean, you guys wrestled, and I'm sure you've dabbled in coaching, soccer, you're outside. It's nice weather for the most part. It's fall, there's still sunlight, and then wrestling comes and you just don't see the light of day ever.
Do you ever get tired? Like, as far as like, I'm going from soccer, I'm outside, you just mentioned, and now I'm in this hot, stinky room with these bright lights. I want to be outside. Like, like, do you have a problem? Like, how long am I going to be able to manage this?
No, and it's funny you say that too. Like in the last year, my wife and I had a baby. She's 8 months. She'll be 9 months next week, maybe next week, something to that effect. I think next week. Um, and it changed everything, right? Like I used to go to the gym like in the evening after practice, and really part of what wrestling instills in you, right? Like just not making excuses and finding a way. So like I wasn't gonna let time or a baby, I know that sounds terrible, to like not go to the gym. So now I get up at 4 a.m., go to the gym at 5 a.m. and I'm the first at Middletown North. I get there probably like 6:20, 6:25 a.m. and then get ready for the day there. So, and then still teach and go right into practice or match, whatever the case might be. And again, going back to those two guys, especially those two guys, to be honest, one of the things I distinctly remember about Gut Wrench and Coach Nace at a young age. I mean, I guess he was maybe like mid-20s at that time, something to that effect. I could be wrong on that, and I'm sure he'll probably text me in a couple of minutes and yell at me or something. But that guy was just a ball of energy. At all times, he commanded that room with like the utmost energy. And it was really attractive. You know what I mean? Like as an athlete, like it was hard not to pay attention and want to do what he was showing. And then when I got to Raritan, Coach Nucci had like the same thing, like this presence about him and this aura where he wasn't on the mat as much as Coach Nace was. But he commanded that room with absolute energy. And it was, again, like if I was going to mimic something, like I had to do that. So when I coach, it's like full steam ahead all the time. Like there's never an off day. I don't take days off ever during the season. And every practice is full of energy. Even like a slower day, you got to be loud. You got to command the room. You got to have energy and know that it's contagious, right? Like the kids kind of feed off that.
What's the secret to that? I had a whole nother question, but I don't want to leave that on the table. What's the secret? Like, we all have bad days. We all have days where, man, I'm tired, man, I'm burnt out, and these kids are jerks some days. How do you go in there and give your best and give your PMA and kind of get rid of everything else going on in your life?
Like a lot of it's attitude and perspective. You know what I mean? Like I've had bad days before, and like my bad days today do not even compare to the bad days I had years ago. Like, you know what I mean? Like not even remotely close. And like the other truth is like I can't be selfish, you know what I mean? Like just because, I don't know, maybe I didn't sleep. The other day I woke up, my 8-month-old was slapping me in the face at 2 o'clock in the morning, but that doesn't give me the excuse to, not show up for practice and be high energy because like same thing, like those kids, look up to you and depend on you, right? Like they kind of need you to carry the boat. And you got to be with them all the time. If I can't expect them to have a good practice if I'm not going to have a good practice. I hate to say that, but it kind of starts and ends with me and the coaching staff. So we kind of developed in the last couple of years a staff that's positive and good influence on these kids.
You mentioned the maybe different personalities or characters between the soccer players and the wrestlers. Do you have a different style or approach coaching both sports?
No, I kind of coach the same. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like even soccer. And I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with short conference soccer, but like, we the last couple of years ran into CBA in the short conference semifinals, which was big for Middletown North. I think we've been to this short conference semis 4 times since 1960. And we did it 2 years in a row in the last. So we were two of the four in the last 2 years. But CBA is fantastic. I mean, they're an awesome program. They're clean. They play really well. Where I kind of have my guys. And same thing with wrestling, like kind of muddy the waters a little bit. Like we play a little bit physical. We make it a little bit uglier and kind of make teams play to us a little bit, which kind of forces you into a game you don't really want to play.
And you're in a unique situation where you probably have to see them CBA, that is, during the regular season as well in both
Usually,
sports. Yeah.
So the short conference, and same thing with wrestling. I'm kind of against it, to be honest. Like in every sport, I don't know how much you followed this in the last year or two, but they've started to change divisions
Yeah.
into like power division. So this year we did wrestling won the B division, which consisted of Middletown North, Ocean, Point Borough, RBC, and Howell. Were like that second tier behind CBA, Vianney, Rumson, Southern, and Brick Memorial was the A division. So it kind of took away from your traditional
A North.
divisions. Yeah, which
Yeah.
I like tradition. I like wrestling those teams. You know what I mean? Like I like knowing that you're going to be in a dogfight with Hal or whoever it might be. You know, Alpin for years was really, really good in A North. CBA was not what they are now. That's for sure.
Yep.
So same thing. You know, like having those battles every week was a lot of fun, and now it's changed. You know what I mean? It changes scheduling. It changes. I think the coaching landscape as well, right? You know, you start to develop relationships with the guys you coach against, and now it's different.
Yeah. Yeah, Jimmy and I are traditionalists as well. Coach Nucci did present a very good case as to why, some of the realignments and things occur. But yeah, we're old school Region 6, and we're old school B South, C South guys. You also mentioned you were still in the division with Howe, and I believe if this was you had a victory over Howe first time in a very long time this
Yeah,
season.
20 years. It was a lot of fun. You know, some of the things like in the last 5 years have kind of um, changed at Middletown North, you know, like little things, right? Like that a lot of schools have, but we just didn't. So when I got there, I started at when I became the head coach, let me rephrase that. I started a parents club for fundraising and things like that. That gave us a little bit more freedom on what we did. So we put in like that first year, we put in a mat light in I don't know if you've ever been to the lower gym at Middletown North, but it's small. Like Point Borough's gym's small. Ours is half that. We only have half the bleachers on one side of the gym. And when a team like Hal comes in, it's standing room only and uncomfortable. So it was a lot of fun. It was, a Wednesday night and first week of January, if I'm not mistaken. Um, Back and forth battle. We had two kids we had circled as toss-ups with big wins, and not only did they win, but I think with the scoring system, it helped them get majors. I kind of coach a more offensive style, so they scored majors, and then in the last match that was wrestled, two great kids, our wrestler Danny Benbrook and Hal's Todd Goings' son, were back and forth, and we were losing. I think we were losing 8-3, if I'm not mistaken. And Danny ended up in it on a takedown and secured a pretty slick pin. And we clinched the match and we forfeited out the last two matches. But it was pretty exciting.
Nice. Tie it back to real quick, Jim. Coach Gagliano was my high school coach my senior year, so assistant coach at Point Borough that year. So the world just keeps getting smaller.
Coach Gags is a good guy. Really,
He
really.
is.
And they're going to
Yeah.
be very good next year.
Eric, one thing I don't want to overlook, you said you lost to CBA 2 years in a row in soccer in the short conference semis. So you were a top 10 wrestling coach and a top 10 soccer coach, correct?
Yeah, at one point. this
That's
year we weren't. This year we weren't top 10 in soccer. The last 2 years we were. The two previous seasons we were.
Well, that's pretty impressive, sir. I don't know too many coaches that are doing that in one sport. And two sports is even more impressive. One thing I want to go back to in 2023, you guys had a losing record, and then this year you guys were top 6 in the short conference, and you lost to North Hunterdon, who won the Group 4 state championships. You lost to them by a point. How'd you turn that around in 2 years?
Culture. I don't even think it was 2 years. I don't know. I feel like the years might be wrong. It's weird. Like the COVID thing always kind of screws me up. I just
You're
remember
not
Tyler.
alone.
We coached the state championship with Tyler in 2020. The week before COVID happened. The next year was a shortened season, which I guess was 2021. I think we only wrestled like 6 matches, maybe something to that effect. And then the year after that, I became the head coach. I didn't even apply to be the head coach, to be honest. That was in October of the soccer season. I applied for my assistant job. in October, I was on a soccer field, and the athletic director called me and was like, "What do you want to do about wrestling?" And I'm like, "I'm going to be the assistant because I like wrestling. Like, I just want to wrestle with kids and get them better. That's all. That's kind of what I do as an assistant." He's like, "Yeah, you're the only applicant for like any of the jobs." So, real late in the game, I kind of inherited, that team that ended up 8-12. We had 23 kids in the program. Some people were still a little bit skeptical about COVID. I guess we were kind of like at the tail end of that, sort of. But people were a little apprehensive. We had 23 kids in the program and a lot of new kids, like a ton of new kids. 8-12. We lost 4 matches by 1 point or 1 bout, like a swing bout. So we could have been 12-8, but that year, like I kind of just, threw it all to the wall, so to speak. I had Brady Klinsky, Tyler's brother, who I've known since he was a baby. At that point, I started coaching Tyler when Tyler was in 6th or 7th grade. So Brady was in 2nd grade, maybe, if I had to guess, when I met him. And Brady was pretty talented, tough, not quite where his brother was, but I didn't want to sacrifice him not getting good matches. And I never wanted to be that coach who like just kind of scheduled like lopsided matches. So like there were weekends, like, I mean, I called the Hunterdon Central coach, and to his credit, we entered a quad with, it was awful. God, I'll never forget this. I should have been fired for this. We wrestled Hunterdon Central, Brick Memorial, and Absegami at Hunterdon Central. And I mean, I sacrificed an entire team for one individual bout. So Brady could wrestle a kid from Hunterdon Central who was pretty good. And we got slaughtered, and Brady did not win that match. So it was not a good Saturday. But the kids slowly bought in, you know what I mean? Like, we're not going to hide from people. We're going to wrestle. We stay in people's faces. We hand fight pretty well. And the kids kind of bought into like this 1 day at a time learning system. And the next year we had more kids. I think we were 18-5 the following year, if I'm not mistaken. I think we went 8-12, 18-5, 21-3, and this year we were 24-2. So it's been 4 or 5 years worth of growth, upward growth. And same thing, like we've looked at teams like 2 years ago. 2 years ago? Yeah, 2 years ago we lost to Howell by, same thing, 1 point. And I had a family situation. The only time I've ever missed anything in a sport ever. My wife and I had an unfortunate loss. You can read between the lines, and like, I'm nuts, right? Like, wrestling people are just damaged in general. I remember the doctor saying, we could, have this surgery on this night. And I was like, I knew we were going to wrestle Hal that night. Like, I had that date like circled in my head, and I like looked at him and I was like, is there any way you could like move this? And like, my wife looked at me. I was like, never, we'll just do it that. Like, we'll stick to the plan. We'll just do it. So that was the only match I've ever actually missed, and we lost by 1. And even still, I remember like my wife was sleeping, after a long day. And I'm like at my kitchen table with people sending me like pictures of the weigh-in sheets trying to figure out this match. And we ended up losing by 1. The next year, same thing. Like, I thought we had them on the ropes. We lost the coin flip, and ended up losing by 1 swing bout again. And then same thing this year, we finally, jumped that, covered that gap and beat them. And North Hunterdon's the other one, right? Like, 3 years ago, they slaughtered us at North Hunterdon. Last year we were having a great year. We were, full steam ahead. Everything was going well. And we just didn't show up that day. That was the one day of the year, I would say, like, our kids just were not there for whatever reason. You know what I mean? Like, mentally, they just were not prepared for that individual match. We lost to Dave Bell. That was his first year, if I'm not mistaken, Dave Bell's first year at North Hunterdon. And then the goal this year wasn't to even just beat them, right? It was to host them, right? So we scheduled, like, some things that get like overlooked. Like, I think a lot of and it's whatever, right? Rankings are done by people who sit at a computer, right? And I try not to like read into that stuff. But we beat, we finished 6th in the Shore. I think we probably beat 7, 8, 9 10 all the way through 15, right? Like there weren't many teams we didn't wrestle in that next group of teams that we didn't beat. So we were fortunate enough to get enough power points to host North Hunterdon. And that match was crazy. Like it was a lot of fun. You know, it was fun. Like Dave Bell's a great guy. He's an excellent coach. He's a wonderful person. I did listen to his podcast with you guys. I was hoping he said something because we're definitely a better match than Phillipsburg. I watched both those matches, and to be fair, like there were a couple of things in our duel, and it is what it is. They won, they're the champs. But there were a couple of things that could have gone our way where we won that bout. And I think he was wrong also with the criteria. If it ended in criteria, we won. They lost. They had a disqualifying point in one of the bouts, but. Same, you know, like our kids did. They bought into this gross mindset. You know, we graduated a couple kids this year, but I'm excited to see what next year brings. You know what I mean? Like we have a good, solid group of kids who are bought in. We wrestle in the off season. We do our tournaments. Kids are bought into club now that club's a bigger thing. And there's three, you know, in shore conference, in my opinion, there's three excellent options, right? You have Triumph, Sure Thing, and Elite. All three of those places are fantastic. Triumph happens to be the closest to us, so that's where the majority of our kids go. But all those guys do an excellent job with kids.
Eric, one thing I want to give you dabs on is you said that first year you had a really good kid on the team and you wanted to make sure he got matches. So you kind of put everyone else as a sacrifice for the schedule. And we talked to Adam Hall, who is now the head coach of Utah Valley, and he did the same thing this year for the gentleman who was an All-American for him this year, and it worked out for him. And you said, maybe I should have been fired for what I did to that team. But do you think having those kids on that team this year kind of made that burn and kind of them through the fire, and you know, it might have not helped that season, but it helps down the road?
I do. A lot of kids on that team came back and were a part of that 18-5 team, or even that 21-3 team the following year. But he was a sophomore that year, if I'm not mistaken. You know, and again, like a North kid similar to a Raritan kid, right? Like it's kind of a blue collar, hard nosed, like gritty place, right? We're half a town, right? There's a whole nother school, right? We lose half of a population. You know, it's different. It's tough, right? We have tough conversations with our kids about, you know, families and lifestyles and things in the world today that they have to deal with on a daily basis. And those kids that you have those like deep, honest, difficult conversations with, usually yield the best results. You know, one kid, you know, in particular, you know, after a practice, I mean, it was a really difficult conversation. Like, and I remember telling him, like, dude, it's not even about wrestling. Like, it's not about right now. It's about in 10 years what your life's going to look like. And it's not good. The next year and I think he was probably below 500 that year. I think maybe like 13-15 or something to that effect. The next year, I mean, he rattled off like 21 pins in a row, something crazy like that. Took second in the district, third in the region, and qualified for states that year. And I remember, like, you know, he qualified for states and was like hugging me, hysterically crying, just like talking about that conversation a year prior. And again, like you never know, like where those conversations are really going to come in place or how it'll play out or anything. But North's a really special place to coach, you know, when you can reach a kid like that and see them succeed. And he's doing really well now. He's graduated and is doing excellent in college.
Eric, talking about, you know, sharing half a town, or you have half a town for the student body and CBA's down the road, RBC's not too far. Do you have to have those conversations at all? Do you have kids that might go to Middletown South, or maybe kids that might go to CBA? Or
I go back
RBC?
and forth. So South and North are the two public schools with geography lines, quite literally, like drawn through like our district based on where you're supposed to go. Which right now, Middletown's like potentially going to change in a year or two, possibly. I don't know. Who knows, right? Any given day with us. I don't really worry about CBA. You know, Billy's a great guy. Coach Ashnall, he's a good guy. He's a good coach or whatever. RBC, the same. You know what? And like, it's funny, like the sport has gone so far. Like I've listened to a lot of the podcasts and these coaches talk about parochials and publics and all this stuff. And you look at college right now, and it's insane with the amount of transfers and the portal and this, that, the third. And it's like, again, you talk about like perspective and stuff, and it's like, this is a high school sport. You know what I mean? Like, this didn't exist when any of the three of us wrestled or competed in sports. Like, it just wasn't like that. I remember CBA like distinctly. Like, you had to be wealthy to go to CBA. And usually it was like a generational thing, right? Like your great grandfather went, your grandfather went, your dad went, and now you're going to go. And it is not that anymore. I'm sure to an extent it still is 100%. Those people absolutely still exist, but it's also become something different. Not for better or for worse. It just kind of is what it is. But at the end of the day, it's a high school sport, right? You know what I mean? Like, I say this all the time, with Tyler. I put in a ton of time and effort with him, right? And he's one of today, like would be considered like a brother to me, right? Like, that's kind of where you get in wrestling, like that hands-on approach, blood, sweat, and tears, the whole nine. The year prior we lost the state final, and got back to work the next day. Like, that was done through hard work, right? Like, strictly hard work. It wasn't like resources or anything like that. It was just hard work. And I think that's why kids like that stay with Middletown North. I think they appreciate that work ethic and that mindset of showing up. We don't have a wrestling room at Middletown North. I think most schools do. We roll mats out every day. And we're a bigger school. I mean, we're a group 4 for wrestling. I think we float around like 1,200 kids, something to that effect. And same, like Middletown South has a wrestling room. We don't. You name it. Like, things are different. But we just don't make excuses. We just kind of show up and do our jobs every day, right? Like, you control the controllables, right? Like the stereotypical cliche, do what you can do with what you got.
You going old school? You rolling them out in the cafeteria?
No, we're in the lower gym. So
Okay.
same place we wrestle matches.
Okay.
So you bring up Tyler and him being your first state champ. Was he the first in the school's history?
It's questionable, right? So there's two in Middletown became Middletown North in 1976 when Middletown South was built. Kenny Hofsenberger won in 1974 for Middletown High School. So Tyler, if you want to really like dig deep, yes, he was the first Middletown North state champ, but he shares that with Kenny Hofsenberger from 1974.
So you mentioned him getting second the year before, and if I'm correct, you were his middle school coach too, right?
Yeah. So again, going back to getting back into coaching, I guess that origin story, right? Circling back, whatever, 30 minutes or however long it's been. I was in sales. I was doing relatively well. And I was trying to get back into education. But like, things had changed, right? Like, the things we learned in college and curriculum and standards, like all of it changed. Which was like a crazy thing. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, right? Like, did I really just go to Monmouth University for an obsolete degree? Like, that's terrible. Like, talk about bad luck. And by accident, and this is the honest to God's truth, by accident, I applied for a middle school wrestling job at Thorne Middle School. And a woman, Darlene Freshnock, her son was Chad Freshnock. He was all 2-time region champ for Middletown North and an awesome football player. He went to Bucknell to play football. Calls me and she's like, yeah, we want to interview you for the wrestling job. And I'm like, you are mistaken. Like, I'm not going to leave like my sales job to coach like a bunch of little kids. It's just not going to happen. And the interview happened to be on my day off. And she's like, well, why don't you just come interview? And I was like, oh, whatever. You know what I mean? Interviews are always good, right? Get the skills or whatever. I went, I talked to them. The principals were great. And they hired me on the spot. But I was like, yeah, like, I don't want to lead you on. Like, I don't really think I could do this. Like, I work in sales. I have a full-time job. I work till 5, 6 o'clock at night, whatever the case might be. I'm pretty confident my boss is going to be pissed if I ask him to leave every day at like 2 o'clock to coach 12-year-olds. And I went to the central office to get substitute paperwork, and Dr. Bill George from Long Branch was the superintendent at the time. And same thing, like going all the way back to high school when nobody knew anything for Shore Regional. Long Branch used to have workouts in the old high school in the wrestling room. And actually, now that I'm thinking about you guys being point bros, and definitely Jimmy, at least, like you had to have wrestled District 23 at that old gym. Dr. George used to run workouts there. I'll never forget, like, he like put his knee right through my chest. I thought he killed me one day. And I walked into the board office and he was there and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, "One of your middle schools just hired me to be a wrestling coach." And he's like, "If you want to be in education, you're going to take the job." And you talk about like faith and things like that. I remember calling like a friend of mine. I'm like, "Yeah, I don't really know what to do. This is like a significant pay cut to like coach little kids wrestling and possibly be a paraprofessional at the time." And he really like put it on me. He's just like, "You're either going to trust that something's taken care of you or not. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts." And kind of with that like blunt question, I was like, "All right, well, I guess I'm going to jump in 2 feet." So I worked 7 days a week. I coached Thorne middle school wrestling in the afternoons. I was a paraprofessional with the special needs kids. It was actually my entryway back into special education, I think we were making like $18 an hour at the time, something like that. Like, and you were only allowed to work 28 hours a week. And then my sales boss was cool enough to let me work on the weekends. So I kind of made up in sales and commission on the weekends. But Tyler was there. And I remember, right, 6th, 7th grade, like a hard-nosed kid, pretty talented, wanted to learn and wanted to be better. And, like you always have like that one coach or that one kid you kind of just like click with. And we did, right. And the rest was kind of history. Still to this day, right? He's still got another year at Ryder. Excited to see what he does next year.
Well, let's take a stroll down memory lane because you mentioned Dr. George, Billy George, and he was a coach at Long Branch when I was in high school, and my arch nemesis that beat me twice in the districts and ended my wrestling career my senior year down in Atlantic City was one Miguel Ramos. And Jimmy was a little tyke, and he used to have his little singlet and his headgear, and he would follow around. And at one point, I think I barked at him to get off the wrestling mat because the wrestling was started. And Mr. George he said, "Come on, man, he's just a little kid. Be nice to him." So we've known Coach George for quite a long time. And, you talk about graduating from Monmouth and your degree being obsolete after a few years, try graduating in 1998 and then trying to get back into teaching in 2022 in South Carolina, nonetheless.
It'll be difficult.
Yeah.
Eric, with Tyler, at what point did you know you had something, and what was that like for you to go on that ride with him from him being in middle school till his senior year in Atlantic City?
Immediately, right? So like I've kind of always been the same way. And literally from like 7th grade, we would work out twice a day, right? Like I would coach him at the middle school. I don't even know how old I was. I'm 38 now. I have no idea how old I was. Maybe I was 26-ish, 28, something to that effect. I don't know. Time kind of flies. It's weird, right? I had no life, no wife, no nothing like that. So I would stay up in Middletown. I lived down here in Neptune, Bradley Beach area, but I would stay up in Middletown, go to like a Wawa, get some crappy sub and a coffee. And we would wrestle at BY, the youth program again. So, I mean, literally from the first year, we were wrestling twice a day at a young age and having fun, right? Like the most important thing as a coach is just have fun. Like if the kids aren't having fun, like they will not perform ever. And I'd like to say I'm original, but that's just not the truth. Like any interview you watch with Penn State, their guys just talk about like loving the sport and having fun and adoration for learning and continuing to grow. And same thing, like ironically enough, 7th grade year, he lost like the short conference middle school tournament. He lost in the final to a kid, Jack Neese from Ocean Township, similar to his junior year in high school, losing the state championship. The next year he came back and won that tournament, but same, right? We wrestled Long Branch in middle school and they were, I mean, as a team, like blew us up. I mean, middle school is crazy. I think there's like 20 weight classes, something like that. And same thing, Long Branch had a kid around his weight, I think a little bit heavier, who's pretty good. And like that coach had the same mindset, Lou DeAngelis. I think he was originally a Raritan guy who ended up teaching in Long Branch. He's been there forever. He's a great guy. he had a kid, Ryan Zimmerman, and we just said, like, dude, like, let's not like dodge the bullet. Let's these kids wrestle, right? Like, let the two best kids on these teams like compete, and whatever happens, right? Like, I'm not tied to the result of the duel. Like, care, it's a middle school match. Who cares? And he did, and like he lost those matches. He was consistently put up against tough competition where he would lose. And then in high school, like that started to change, right? He was a 4-time district, 4-time region champ, 2-time state finalist, and just constantly showed growth. I think his freshman year was state wrestleback 2, state wrestleback 3 his junior year, and then state finalist, state champ.
Coming up, how do you have those, big picture conversations with a young kid, especially in middle school, not to get down on themselves and telling them, we're doing these matches for bigger things down the road. I know it's even with high school kids, sometimes it's tough to have that conversation of like, hey, if I'm not getting you losses, I'm probably not doing my job.
It's really tough. I mean, especially at a young age right now. You know what I mean? I think and nothing to do with wrestling. I think just like society as a whole, right, is a little bit different. I mean, call it for whatever reason, technology, social media, the world as a whole, right, is just a little bit different. So having those conversations, you got to be a little bit more cautious, I guess, and how you handle it. And I think like any good coach, right, kind of does the same thing, right? Like you kind of coach them hard and love them hard, right? You know what I mean? You beat them up and love them up too, right? So after any win or loss, right, it's all the same, right? I'm not going to be mad at a kid for losing, right? Did you go out there? Did you put forth your best effort? Did you do the things we did in practice? If it didn't work out, it's all right. We get back to the drawing board. In high school, right, like the stakes are a little bit bigger. Things matter a little bit more, same thing. Like I remember Tyler's brother, his junior year, losing in Atlantic City, right, which is tough, right? Like there's articles every year about, the backstage of Atlantic City and those hallways, and it's like haunting and sad and the most depressing place in Atlantic City, I think the article is called every year. I remember him losing and us sitting down, and like that conversation was just about having fun, right? Like cut loose, have a little bit more fun, like play and learn, and let's like love this sport even more than we already do, right? Like, and it's probably going to sting and suck for a little bit, but let's get back at it. And same thing, like to his credit, his senior year, won the district, lost in the quarterfinals of regions to a freshman from Del Barton, pretty talented freshman, but then wrestled back and placed at the state tournament his senior year. So like, you know what I mean? Like you have to have a short-term memory, especially in tournaments, right? Like you have to immediately swallow that result and move on.
And he's at Ryder now too, right?
He is. He's with his brother for the time being. Same, like part of being a coach, and especially in today's world, as a teacher and coach, I think people fall short in life plans, right? Like I knew at a young age I wanted to be a teacher. Like there was no doubt about that. There were bumps along the road, and I ended up in sales for whatever reason, right? The economy, things like that. And I remember, Tyler specifically when he was a junior in high school, I asked him if he wanted to coach. And he said yes, and I was like, "Well, you're probably going to be a cop or teacher," And there was we were in the weight room lifting together. There was a gentleman, a phys ed coach who's still there today, hanging out, getting paid to be in the weight room. And I was like, like that guy, like great guy, I was like, that guy's probably making like 95 grand at the time, and that was however many years ago. So, Tyler's, finishing up a master's program to be a history teacher. And Brady wanted to be a police officer. So Brady, I think pretty soon, if I'm not mistaken, he is going to enter the police academy this July. So again, like part of coaching is right, like setting them up for success. Wrestling ends, you know what I mean, for most people, right? Like there's not really a future in terms of like pro sports, and if there was, like it's even more selective. You look at like our world team and our Olympic teams, like those guys are really, really special. And then you can end up coaching, right? Like if you love it that much and want to give back to the community, you end up being a coach, but you got to find an occupation or a career that allows you to do that.
Eric, what was it at such an early age that you knew you wanted to be a teacher?
I always liked helping people. I have no idea why, to be honest. Like I'll credit my mom on that. You know what I mean? Like, and again, to kind of tie it into Middletown North a little bit, right? Like, your typical American divorced family, dysfunction, the whole nine. Like we grew up pretty poor. My mom worked 5 jobs, but like she instilled certain values in us. Me and my brother at a young age, to be good to people, to take care of each other, take care of ourselves, and the whole nine. Um, and when I was in high school, I had excellent teachers. I did. Like I remember I had fantastic English teachers. Our wrestling coaches. Like not to go without mentioning them, Rich Santangelo and Will Wertz, ended up as being a head coach of Marlboro for a number of years. Those were excellent men, right? Like those are good guys. And again, like the sport's changed and evolved so much. Like you look at them as coaches in 2002 to who you're looking at today in whatever 2025 with Ashnalts and Roy's and you name it. These guys who are coaching. Chris Noddy wrestled for Oklahoma State. Like these are like talented individuals, the whole nine. But those guys were fantastic, right? So and same like my whole life, I saw Jay Nace running Gut Wrench, and I was like, this guy's got something about him, right? I ended up at Raritan, and Rob Nucci was a guy where I'm like, something like this guy's got it figured out for this community. And I was fortunate enough to end up in a community similar to it, with a background similar to it, right? Like I can identify and relate to those kids in certain aspects. So it helps me help them.
Eric, you mentioned wrestling. It's not all about the wins and losses, and you mentioned the one athlete that you had to have a conversation with, like, hey, 10 years from now, the way your work ethic is, you're not going to be good off in life. What do you hope that kids take when they leave your room and bring out into the real world?
Just to be a better person, right? We kind of like teach things about like doing the next right thing for the next right reason, and understanding why, right? Like, and there's like a lot to be said about that, right? Like, yeah, it's easy to watch people in wrestling, and you talk about like resources and excuses and things like that. Like, when we wrestled, there weren't like these clubs and specialists and private training. Everybody today is a specialist. Like it's remarkable, right? Like everybody gets paid, and everybody, you should come here and do this with me because like I'm unique and you should pay me money for it. Which is like mind blowing to me. Like that wasn't like a thing when we were kids, right? It was just like show up, do your best, and work hard. Like those basic principles, right? Like got people where they are, right? Like whether it was a sport, right? Whether you really succeeded in a sport and placed in a state tournament, or whether you ended up being, an excellent business person or a teacher, whatever the case might be. I think those get instilled at a young age. So like when you talk to these kids and have those tough conversations, knowing that you have somebody in your corner, is really helpful, right? And the same, right? It's so easy to be down on somebody, and it's a lot easier to kind of have that perspective to know that like no matter what, like you need to like love this kid unconditionally, right? And like damn right, they're probably going to piss you off at some point and probably do it again. Um, but you got to love them until they love themselves, right? You got to kind of like teach them the way and show them, and I had people who didn't lead me, right? Like they walked shoulder to shoulder with me and showed me how to live a life kind of worth living. So try to do the same for my guys.
So I have some questions about the program, but I have to, as first team all special ed, and you being a guy who doesn't seem to let kids make excuses just based on this conversation, and I knew being, in a class that I was probably maybe in one mainstream class in high school, and that was kind of like a death sentence, but the only thing I had a family that would not, my IEP might have been this thick, but they didn't care. It might have took me 15 years to graduate college, but I did it. So, how do you have those conversations with special ed students who might be being told by their parents or everyone else, like, oh, you're gonna be working manual labor, you're not gonna be able to go to college. How do you have those conversations with kids?
It's ironic, right? So my training partner in high school, while I had these, in 2001, 2002, these, like deep rooted dreams of being a teacher and college and education, right? Because those are the things you're constantly told. My best friend at the time, my training partner who got me into wrestling, Billy was his name, could care less about school, right? Like we used to sit in an SAT prep class and he would sit in front of me sound asleep. I used to like slap him in the back of the head. Like, dude, you're an idiot. And I remember saying stuff like that, like, you're going to fail. Except he started plumbing when he was 16. And same thing. I'm like, you literally work in like, I don't want to curse or whatever, but like you work in like feces and stuff, like it's garbage. You suck. Like it's the worst. And like, I couldn't have been more wrong, right? We're the same age. He owns his own company, probably has 3 brand new F-150s, went to 1 day of community college, took the ID picture, probably sat in a class for 4 minutes and said like, yeah, I'm good. And started his own plumbing companies and I don't even know if he works anymore, quite frankly. I think he just has people work for him. So like the kids I teach, like those vocations and those trades are excellent. You know what I mean? Like you think about being a homeowner and things like that and, not being able to change like in an outlet or whatever the case might be. And, you call somebody and all of a sudden you're like 250 deep to change an outlet. So like these kids, who are at least on a path, it's a good path. Right. And I think, the world again like has changed and shifted where like we were constantly told like you need to go to college, you need to get a degree, you need to do A, B, and C. Like it's not necessarily the case anymore. I think there's a lot of value in trades and vocations and pensionable income, whether it's being a police officer. I think the rules for that have changed, or the guidelines to be a police officer have changed, and kids are starting to see that and go that route more often now.
Yeah, I'm always encouraging kids to learn a trade, and it's a shame that back in the day we had things like wood shop and metal shop and home ec, and even at Southern where I started, my uncle was an auto mechanics teacher. Now they've kind of outsourced all that to the county boat tech schools, but I'm always encouraging kids because I'm from that same thing where it was, if you went to vocational school, you were, it was like a frowned upon thing in 1994, and I look back and I'm like, man, I would have loved to gone to like do culinary arts or something. Or I'm fascinated with barber culture, man. I could have went to cosmetology, learned how to be a barber. It might have been a whole different thing. We might not be having this conversation. So I appreciate all that stuff. And as a teacher, now a physical education teacher and a coach, I appreciate your perspective and everything, because sometimes it is, there are days where you just got to like go in the bathroom and kind of talk to yourself and pump yourself up a little bit. Like, come on, man, we're here for a reason. We gotta change some lives and make a difference here. So I appreciate your perspective and saying all the things you said tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah. Curious, looking ahead to the future, to the 2025, 2026 season, you mentioned, getting tough matches and having a tough schedule. What are the goals heading into next year? And I guess, what are the plans for the summer? You got guys going to try to make the Fargo team and that sort of stuff?
We have a couple kids who are actually, ironically enough, going to Jay Nace's freestyle classes at Triumph now. So that kind of came full circle. They won't try Fargo again. Like those things are expensive. I briefly touched on like the sport. It used to just be like you needed a pair of shoes, right, and a mat. Now it's a little bit different. You need a little bit more, possibly to go to events like that, to travel like that and the whole nine. But we go to a ton of duels. We'll be at Raritan duels. We already did one. We go to like 3 or 4 of them. Bronc duels at Ryder. Quaker duels is out in Pennsylvania. We do that in the fall. We do a ton of like team bonding over the summer, barbecues, things like that, cornhole, just to keep the guys together, open mats. We have, former wrestlers, former guys from North come in, right? The Klinskys will be there. We have guys from the 70s. Hugo Pinto comes in, former coaches. A ton of people want to help out with the program and help in that direction. And then in terms of next year, right, we were 24-2 this year. We won the division. We lost to North Hunterdon by, we were quite literally like inches or a judgment call, like literally from being top 10 in the state. You look at it that way, and it is what it is, right? But we look at, that team, right? Dave Bell is going to be good, right? North Hunterdon is going to be good. So we're starting off the season tough, right? We're going up to Phillipsburg December 20th, their team, right? For years we struggled against in Group 4. We couldn't beat them for a number of years. So we're going to wrestle them December 20th up there with Mount Olive. So right off the bat, we're in a top 10. I think it's a try. I don't know if they got another team, and then we go to the Mustang Classic right after. So we kind of put it on these kids to, test yourselves all the time. And then we get into the division. The division's going to be tough too, right? Like it shakes up every year, but it's tough. We're in that second tier, that B division again this year. I think it's Howell, us, Ocean, Wall, and Jackson just combined. Jackson Liberty and Jackson Memorial became one school again. So they are now in that second division.
And does the divisions change every year? Is it every 2 years or?
No, it's every year. So it's the same thing. You lose that tradition, you lose the rivalry, you lose kind of the meaning behind it, which I really don't like. Same with districts, right? Back in the day. And listen, I understand the Region 6 thing, and I don't think there's a better person to talk to about it than Coach Nucci. I mean, if I even attempted to talk about it, I wouldn't do it justice. I get it, like the numbers, and it makes sense, but like there is something to be said about like those old districts and those old matches and those old rivalries and stuff. And we lose that now. Every year it gets reshuffled and redrawn, and the athletic directors, to be fair, have not done a good job with it. This year it's based on a 33% rule between returning region qualifiers, returning state qualifiers, and PowerPoints. And I mean, it's numbers, right? Like it's metrics. Like you could literally look at these numbers, and they're wrong, right? The divisions are 100% incorrect. But it is what it is, right? You just kind of wrestle the schedule that's given to you.
Yeah.
We are those old school guys. I want back old school Region 6. Obviously, it's easy for me to say I live here in Florida and have nothing to do with wrestling, but yeah, that's how I know my geography of the state of New Jersey is based on regions, right? Like I know where certain places, kind of the vicinity, just based on the region. One last thing I have for you before we get in the Final Four is we're from Point Borough, and our big match is Point Beach. Is Middletown North and Middletown South, is that a big deal? Wrestling, soccer?
No,
No.
and I hate to say it. I'm not from Middletown, so I don't really buy into the North-South thing. They blow everything up, right? Like the North-South football games every Thanksgiving. The soccer game always ends up being the night game, which to me, like, I'd rather play like somebody else's at. And like wrestling, again, like, they do a good job over there. But we typically end up on the winning side of that. For whatever reason, right? We do the best we can with the kids we got, and that's something that usually falls in our favor in terms of wrestling. And our rival, I guess you could say Hal, right? We've been back and forth for not for a number. They beat us for 20 years, except for this year. But those matches are pretty tight and close. And same, like, there's always like that. I would say like that Raritan's always a tough match. We've won that the last couple of years, but those are always really tough, close matches. Like no matter what. Point Borough, same thing. Pat Brady does a great job with those guys. Those are always tough matches. Sippy at Ocean. So like I think if you look at the Shore Conference and like any of those teams from like 6 to 12-ish are pretty good matches.
I lied. One more. Is BYAA rec, is that still a big deal? Because we used to wrestle them in Point Beach, and the worst beating I ever got in my life was by Frank Molinaro, BYAA Rex, and BYAA rec always used to hammer us. So is that still a thing?
I mean, at least you lost to Frank Molinaro, right? I guess that's not the worst thing.
Well, just as like maybe it's like perspective. I was in fifth grade, but I will say, and Rich has beat my ass, and I've had my ass beat plenty of times. That is the worst ass. I can never remember being that sore after any kind of form of combat athletics.
I believe it. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, BY is still the youth program. It gets split between the two schools. It's pretty big. So we try to do our best with those guys and get them up. And then Middletown has 3 middle schools, which is a little confusing. Thorne goes to us. Thompson goes to South. Bayshore gets split more so to South. But like I said earlier, they're talking about, right, like there's declining enrollment and stuff like that all over the state. I mean, I don't know how much you follow like New Jersey papers anymore, but it's everywhere. So there might be like redistricting with different lines and stuff. And, you know, if the day comes, whatever, we'll same thing, just do our best with the kids we get.
Is that are people leaving the state, or people going to non-public schools, or is just people just not having as many kids?
I think it's people not having as many kids, right? You look
Yeah.
at the economy worldwide, it's crazy, right? Like the price of houses, the stock market, like you name it. So I think, you know, whatever 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, where like the family idea of like 2, 3, 4 kids isn't really a thing, right? Like I think a lot of people now, you know, myself included, you know, play it safe, right? Like we're fortunate and blessed to have one daughter. Um, and you know, it makes the most sense for us right now.
As a wrestling coach of a daughter, do you see a singlet and headgear in her future?
People ask me that all the time. They're like, "Oh, she's gonna wrestle," and I'm like, "I don't know." You know, like I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest. You know, at North we just don't have any girls. I will say this: I've been fortunate more recently to be helping out Triumph Wrestling Club, and there's a young girl who attends the middle school class I run, and she is an all-star. You know, she's in a class of all boys. I tell her all the time, like, "You're my hero." You know what I mean? Like, I think about like her, and she is good. Like this girl is legit. She mixes it up with the boys. She learns like a sponge. I mean, she wants to learn. You can tell. And I do like I think about like my daughter, like possibly being like that. And you know what? At the end of the day, right? I don't know because I'm not there, right? But whatever she wants to do, you know, you show up and do your best. No different than the kids you coach. I'm going to show up and do my best for my daughter, right? And it's funny, like now I think about Jimmy asking that question about being tired, and it's like, you know what I mean? Like you're working out at 5 a.m., you're full steam ahead teaching at 7 a.m., you're firing them off coaching at 2:30, and then you come home and it's like you got to be energetic again for the wife and baby, right? You can't come home and shut it down. You got to show up again at the end of the day. And those are good if we're going to look at them as a problem. Like those are excellent problems. Like I'm super grateful for the problems I have today.
Do you sleep well?
I do, except when I'm getting slapped in the face by a 8-month-old. But aside from that, I sleep pretty well.
Well, your energy is contagious, sir. You got me fired up right now. Is there anything about your journey, Middletown North Wrestling, that we haven't covered that you want to get out there before we get in the Final Four?
No, I just say that, you know, like, and again, like nothing's original, right? Everything's stolen, right? Like when I was in college, like Monmouth, right? Like the best professors I had steal everything. You know, so I stole a lot of what I did from, you know, Coach Nace and Coach Nucci. You know, our Tough Together. I'd like to tell you I created that. I didn't. I'm pretty sure I stole it from Nebraska, if I'm not mistaken. One of those schools, Nebraska or Illinois, something like that. But it's over everything, right? Like we branded everything with that. We put it on, you know, hundreds of t-shirts and sweatshirts and give it to the kids. I do that for soccer too, right? I kind of, that's more of a me thing. Like I push that to all my athletes. And wrestling's cool, right? Like you see them, like they stick together, they push each other, they beat each other up, and then they screw around each other with each other too, right? Like I constantly see them like in the hallways, you know, probably doing things they shouldn't necessarily be doing because they should be in class. But they're always together. You know what I mean? Like in the middle of a wrestling season on like a Saturday after practice, I'm getting videos like FaceTime from, you know, kids making like French toast sticks and like which one I'm like, you guys are idiots, right? Like you're literally going against everything we talk about all day long. So thanks for making me feel like you just don't listen. But at the end of the day, they're doing it together, right? Like they're having a good time, they're screwing around, and I probably owe some parents some ShopRite gift cards or something. But it's an awesome thing to see these kids just kind of like band together, and you know, like even that North Hunterdon match, like that match was probably the most fun I've ever had coaching, and we lost, right? We lost in the state final. And I mean, it was wild. Like that place was shaking, it was rocking. You know, our administration, everybody was there. Like if you didn't like wrestling or know much about wrestling before that night and you were there, you loved wrestling walking out of that. And I give it, you know, it's to the kids, right? Like at the end of the day, like I'm just a coach. Like I don't go wrestle the matches. You know, we do our best to prepare. But it's fun creating an atmosphere like that.
We get home of this winter, Jim, we're gonna have to go to a Middletown North match for sure.
Absolutely. And you're gonna have me following soccer this year too, Eric. So
That's good.
there you go. Final four, Rich.
Let's do it.
Eric, are you a coffee drinker?
I do.
How do you brew your coffee and how do you take it?
My brother just got me a Keurig, but it has like the regular pour over, I guess, like not the single K cup, your regular brewed pot of coffee. And I'm light, like I have the I guess French vanilla like Coffee Mate or whatever's on sale, but the French vanilla typically.
Right on.
You have a favorite roaster in Monmouth County?
I don't go often just because I'm constantly on the road. But if I ever have a free minute, and probably $4 because they're probably expensive now, Rook is awesome.
No. Eric, do you have a daily practice or ritual that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Eric Morley?
Yeah, so I get up at 4 a.m. every day to get ready for the gym, right? And work the whole day. I come downstairs, make the coffee, go back upstairs, shower. And when I'm downstairs by myself, baby's sleeping, wife's still sleeping, I have a daily reading that I read every day just to kind of like set pace for the day and sit quiet and reflect on, whatever it's asking me to do and say a little prayer for the day and try to be mindful of the fact that like, I don't know everything, and I ask to kind of set aside everything I think I know to have a new experience like today, right? Like I go do the same job, I teach the same kids every day, I coach the same sport with the same kids, but there's no ordinary moments, and not every day is the same. So,
Amen.
Yeah, I can. I'm gonna throw that into my daily life because some days I feel like I'm doing the same thing every day. So it'd be nice to get a new perspective and to ask from that in my daily prayer. So thank you for that. What are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
I listen to the Moana soundtrack on repeat. Awesome. I listen to just about anything. I will say, like, I don't know who was the first person you guys did that I caught. It might have been Jay. Like maybe Jay and I talk probably every morning at like 6:40. Right? He's going to Wall. I'm going to North. And we golf together. Right? I'm fortunate enough to coach his kid Kyle as well as an excellent young man. But yeah, I kind of like listen to anything, but I think he had said he was going to be on your podcast, and I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure Jimmy beat me when I was in high school. And I'll listen, right? Like I'll listen to a friend, and I did. Like I was like, these guys are awesome. So then you did Nucci and Borowski was the one person you didn't mention.
Sorry, Justin.
You seemed like you were looking for another short con. You did Justin Borowski.
Sorry,
I
Justin.
remember him in District 23, right? Point Beach.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love listening to you guys when you go. Dave
Thank
Bell,
you.
right, was another one. So I'll listen to just about anything, and then yeah, some Disney music because why not?
Well, thanks for listening. That means a lot to us. We're not just saying that to say it, to know that people listen to us. Sometimes it's like, wow, people listen, so thank you very much.
Eric, last one we got for you. It's a lighthearted one to close it out. Could be maybe there's a unique food that you're into. We mentioned the Bradley Brew Project at the start here. You mentioned the Moana soundtrack. Maybe you have a Swiftie in the making. Do you have a guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure. I mean, for the most part, I live a pretty healthy lifestyle, but like at night, like I can assure you, like when I hang this up or close the computer, like I'll have like a cup of chips or something. Like I love potato chips. I love salty food, pretzels, things like that. And it's funny, right? Like I'll do all this stuff all day to be healthy, and I'll eat, blueberries and salads for lunch and whatever. And then like 8 o'clock comes, and I'm like, let's have some sour cream and onion chips.
As long as it fits your macros, you're all right. One last one, just off topic, but you say you go to the gym early in the morning. What are you hitting? Are you doing like a bodybuilding split? What's your go-to?
No, all interval training now. Same
Okay.
thing, right? Like when my wife was pregnant, she started going to a certain gym in Neptune. And I was like, Jesus, like I should probably be present for that. So I started going with her, and at like 38 years old, like I'm not trying to be like a world beater or anything. Like I just want to be healthy, and like the older I'm getting, it's harder for me to go out and run 2 miles. But like this is more like like the ski erg and rower and like short, like 40-second sprints or a 5-minute as hard as you can and stuff like that, where I can kind of push myself to be in pretty good shape that way. So it's nice being able to adapt when you're getting a little bit older. And then same thing, like I still wrestle as a coach. I never want to be the guy who just directs or manages. Like I have to have my hands on and wrestle. So keeps me ready for that too.
At the gym, is that a individual thing or you're taking a group class?
No, it's a group class.
Okay.
And Matt Hughes, the Matawan coach, he goes in the morning too. I kind of roped him into the 5 a.m.s. He was probably pissed for a little bit, but he can suck it up. He goes now. So,
well, Jimmy and I have coached many a CrossFit classes, and the 5 a.m. class is usually the most dedicated and the most energetic throughout the day. So respect to you for that.
thank you.
Yeah.
Eric, you are the man, sir. I'm super stoked on this conversation. Appreciate you taking time from your night and your family to chat with the Airey Bros.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. You guys are awesome. Keep doing a good job. It's fun listening to you guys. And I look forward to what you guys do in the future. Right? I hope you guys continue to grow the community.
We do appreciate that, Eric, and we do appreciate your time. Thank your wife and your daughter for allowing you the time to join us. That's it, ladies and gentlemen, for this week. We do greatly appreciate you tuning in. We will be back next week with Ed Fry from Doane. Cross Country and Track and Field will be joining us. And then we're going back Wednesday night, going deep into the Shore Conference sports history with Kevin Williams. We are excited for that one. So